Since the dawn of civilization, fire has been more than just a physical force. It has symbolized purity, power, punishment, and perhaps nowhere is fire more deeply feared and revered than in religion. From ancient texts to modern sermons, fire has appeared again and again as a tool of divine judgment, a warning, a consequence of moral failure, and most terrifying of all, as a glimpse into the afterlife. In many of the world's major religions, fire is used not only as a symbol, but as a final destination for the wicked, a place of no return, a place where the soul suffers. Why fire? Why not ice, or darkness, or silence? Because fire is alive, it moves, it consumes. It cannot be touched without consequence. Its pain is immediate, and its destruction is total. For early humans, fire was the ultimate danger and the ultimate mystery. It gave life, but it also ended it. That dual nature made it the perfect metaphor for divine power. In Christianity, fire appears in nearly every description of hell. The lake of fire is not just imagery, it's doctrine. Passages in the New Testament speak of unquenchable fire, of torment, of weeping and gnashing of teeth. To sin, then, was not just to break a rule, it was to risk the flame. For centuries, this idea shaped how people lived. It shaped laws, morality, behavior, and most of all, fear. Children grew up with stories of fire, of eternal pain, of never-ending suffering. Preachers warned, if you do not repent, this fire awaits you. The fear was not just about death, it was about what came after. In Islam, too, fire plays a central role in the concept of hell, known as Jahannam. The Quran describes layers of fire, different punishments, gates of flame. For the proud, the cruel, the disbelievers, fire is promised. But so is mercy. Fire in Islamic theology is not just punishment, it is also purification. Some are cleansed. Others remain forever, but the flame always carries meaning. Unlike Christianity, the fire in Islam is not chaos. It is controlled by divine will. It exists for a reason. It is justice, not rage. In Hinduism, fire takes a different role. It is sacred, worshipped, offered to. Fire is a bridge between the mortal and the divine. In rituals like Havan or Yagna, offerings are made to the flame, which carries them to the gods. But even here, fire connects to the afterlife. In Hindu cremation rituals, the body is offered to Agni, the fire god. The belief is that fire purifies the body, freeing the soul. It is not punishment, it is release. Yet, within some texts, the idea of fiery punishment also exists. Sinners may face realms where heat, fire, and burning are part of their karmic consequence. Again, fire returns as judgment. In Buddhism, while the afterlife is more cyclical, fire still appears as a metaphor for desire, attachment, and suffering. The Buddha spoke of the fire sermon, describing life as burning with passions, hatred, and illusion. Escape, then, is not from literal flames, but from the inner fire that causes suffering. The fire here is symbolic, but it is still feared, still powerful. Across ancient Greek and Roman beliefs, fire showed up in underworld myths. The river Phlegethon, a stream of fire, flowed through Hades. Punishments were tied to heat, lava, burning. Again, a fiery vision of consequence. Even in Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest monotheistic faiths, fire is sacred. It represents truth. But its opposite, the lie, the sin, leads to a burning abyss where souls are separated from light. Fire becomes a measure, a divider, a judge. So what does all of this mean? It means that across time and geography, humans turn to fire to represent the unthinkable, the eternal punishment of the soul. Why? Because we know fire. We've touched it. We've feared it. We understand its pain. And we believe, if the afterlife is real, if judgment awaits, then surely it must involve something as unbearable as fire. But does this belief guide us? Or haunt us? Does it keep us moral? Or keep us afraid? The idea of fire in the afterlife isn't just about the future. It shapes how we live today. It influences laws, morals, culture, even personal guilt. For centuries, people obeyed rules not just out of kindness, but out of fear. Fear of the fire waiting after death. Fear of eternal pain. Fear of being judged and sent into the flames. This fear controlled behavior. It shaped communities. It built entire belief systems where obedience was rewarded and sin was punished not just on earth, but beyond it. In medieval Europe, sermons often described hell in vivid detail. The fire wasn't distant, it was personal. Priests would speak of flames licking at the skin, of endless torment, of crying without relief. These images stayed with people. They passed into art, paintings, books, music. The message was clear: sin leads to fire. Artists like Hieronymus Bosch painted terrifying visions of hell, bodies twisted in flame, demons feeding the fire. These weren't just paintings, they were warnings. In literature, fire became the center of the afterlife. Dante Alighieri's Inferno described hell as a place of circles, each one with its own punishment. And fire burned in nearly everyone, but this wasn't just fantasy. It was how people imagined justice. To suffer forever was considered fitting for those who committed great wrongs, murderers, betrayers, blasphemers. The worst sins needed the worst punishments. And what could be worse than fire? In Islam, the descriptions of Jahannam are detailed, but so is the hope of mercy. The Quran speaks of levels in hell, of people being punished according to their deeds, but also of doors to forgiveness. Still, for many, the idea of hellfire remains deeply real. It influences decisions. It causes fear. It affects mental health. Some live with anxiety, not about life, but about the afterlife. In many cases, guilt becomes tied to fire. A person sins. They regret it, but instead of seeking peace, they live in fear. Fear of punishment. Fear of judgment. Religious institutions, especially in the past, sometimes use that fear to maintain control. If people believe their actions determine their afterlife, they are easier to guide or manipulate. But over time, voices rose asking, is eternal fire justice or cruelty? Modern theologians debate this. Some say fire is symbolic, a metaphor for separation from God. Others still believe in literal flames. The discussion is deep, complex, emotional, but no matter what side one believes, the power of fire remains. In Eastern faiths, fire is more often tied to transformation than punishment. In Hinduism, fire is both end and beginning. Cremation releases the soul. Fire doesn't punish, it purifies. Still, the fear exists. Not because of the flame, but because of what it means, the end of identity, of ego, of control. In Buddhism, fire represents the burning of desire, hatred, ignorance. To escape the cycle of suffering, one must extinguish the inner fire. This view sees fire not as hell, but as life itself. The burning is within. The escape is spiritual. So across faiths, fire means many things: justice, purification, warning, renewal. But in all of them, it demands respect. In the modern world, the concept of hellfire still lingers, even among non-believers. Movies show fiery pits. Cartoons joke about burning demons. The imagery is everywhere. Why? Because fear of fire is universal, deep, ancient, hard to erase. Even those who reject religion often carry the imagery. It shows how powerful the idea truly is, but fire can also be reclaimed. Today, Candles are lit in prayer. Flames flicker during meditation. Fire becomes a symbol of focus, of warmth, of hope. In some places, eternal flames burn in memory of the dead, not as punishment, but as honor. This dual meaning, pain and peace, is what makes fire so important in spiritual life, and perhaps that's the point. Fire reminds us of consequence, but it also reminds us of change, of transformation, of rebirth. Maybe hellfire wasn't just meant to scare. Maybe it was meant to guide, to remind us that our actions matter, that justice is real, that the soul must answer for what the body does, but also that mercy exists, that the fire isn't the end, it's a lesson, a process. A gate dot, and perhaps beyond the flame, there is peace. What we believe about fire and the afterlife says a lot about what we believe about ourselves. Are we meant to suffer? Or are we meant to grow? Do we fear the fire, or do we rise from it? In the end, fire remains in our stories, our prayers, our fears, our hopes that it burns, but it also lights the path. And whether it's punishment or purification, destruction or renewal, fire will always be part of the soul's journey.